We came to this shack to escape the rain. I'm starting to think we'll never make it out alive. June 1st. My name is Cora, and, if you find this, I'm probably dead. That would be a cool opening, right? Don't worry, my life isn't that interesting. I'm not even sure why I'm keeping this journal. Probably because I have nothing else to do. My mom got it for me when my therapist said it might help to write down my feelings, and I guess it helps. Kind of. Anyway, what else am I supposed to do? We've been in this stupid house for hours now, listening to the rain. No power, no TV, no internet. So writing it is. It all started when Kayla suggested we go out last night. Kayla is my best friend. I've only known her for 6 months, but it feels like my whole life. I don't have many friends, the other kids have avoided me since the incident. But Kayla makes up for that. So when she wanted to go out, I said okay, even though I'm not much of a going out person. Apparently there was this party at her friend's house in the country. I've never met this friend, but Kayla said she's cool. Neither of us has a car, so we called an Uber and got a ride to the place. The party was okay. Not really my scene, lots of jocks and wannabe influencers, but there were a couple of decent people who I talked to, and Kayla seemed to have a good time. One of them agreed to drop us off at home after, and we figured, why not save the cost of another Uber, so we said yes. When we were halfway home it started storming really badly, to the point where it was impossible to see anything. The guy was afraid of crashing the car, so we decided to pull over. Luckily there was this house in the middle of a field. I'd never seen it before, but I didn't usually go out this way. Kayla said it was fine, so her friend pulled over and we all dashed through the rain to the house. Luckily the door was unlocked, and we piled in to get out of the rain. I said it was a house before, but it was really more of a shack. 2 rooms, barely decorated, with a single bathroom that was more like an outhouse that someone forgot to move outdoors. I had no idea how anyone could live here. Maybe they liked the Spartan lifestyle? I called out for anyone to let them know we were there, but I got no response. After calling out twice more, and Kayla doing so once, as well, we gave it up and figured the place was abandoned. It was pretty shoddy, but it kept the rain out. And since none of us had cell service, remind me never again to go to a party in the middle of nowhere, we went to the rooms, Kayla and I took one and her friend took the other, and hunkered down for the night. That's where I'm writing this. Hopefully the rain stops soon, and Mom and Dad don't have a cow when we get home tomorrow. June 2nd. Woke up this morning to the sound of rain hitting the roof. The storm hasn't stopped, and we were tempted to just go for it, but the rain is still so heavy that we can't see anything, and no one wants to die on the road, so we voted to try to wait it out a bit longer. Since we're stuck here, we decided to do some exploring. There's no electricity, like I said in my last entry, but we found some old candles and matches, so we lit a few to get rid of the darkness and had a look around. It's pretty bare bones, basically just a shack with 2 bedrooms, a single bathroom, and a kitchen straight out of the 1800s. With, like, a stove that you have to burn wood to use. How old is this place, anyway? And why hasn't anyone knocked it down and built a mall, or a Starbucks? I know we're in the middle of nowhere, but space is hard to come by these days. Oh well, guess we should be glad it's here or we'd be out in the storm right now. Small favors, right? But the bigger issue is food. There's some old stuff in jars, but it looks like it's been there for a century. No one wants to eat it. But our options are limited. I always keep some protein bars and a bottle of water in my bag, but that won't last long, especially if I have to split it with Kayla and Nick, her friend. But hopefully we'll be out of here by tomorrow before it gets too bad. I guess I should enjoy this experience, since I haven't spoken to Mom and Dad since yesterday. They'll probably never let me leave the house again. Is this what they mean by making memories? It's overrated. June 3rd. The rain hasn't stopped. This is weird, right? I've been in storms before. I've always kind of liked the sound of rain on the roof when I'm safe inside, but I've never known one to go on for over 2 full days. Is this some kind of freak global warming thing? Being stuck in this shack with only the 3 of us, no power, no phone service, and nothing to do is driving everyone a bit stir-crazy. At least Nick gets some privacy. I love Kayla, I really do, but being with her all day and all night is starting to grate on my nerves. And apparently she's a talker, which would normally be fine in small doses, but stuck here, it's all the time. Even when I want to sleep at night. Also, to be honest, this place is starting to creep me out a bit. Last night, I could have sworn I heard a sound in the shack, like someone moaning. I know, that sounds ridiculous, but it's what I heard. I went out to look around and didn't see anything, so I went back to bed. This morning, I told Kayla and Nick about it, and they said that I was probably just dreaming. And maybe they were right. That makes sense. Only, it didn't feel like a dream. June 4th. We talked this morning and decided that we can't just keep sitting around. waiting for the rain to stop. We have to do something. So Nick wrapped himself in a blanket and dashed out to his car. Or where he thought his car was. It wasn't there. It's still impossible to see anything, with the rain coming down the way it is, but he was sure he knew where he parked, and he swears the car's gone. Kayla and I ran out to take a look, but we couldn't see anything and came back in after only a minute. Nick thinks someone stole the car, but who would steal a car in this weather? Who could even find it? Kayla thinks we're just looking in the wrong place and we should look again when the rain stops. I hope it does. Also, I had a weird feeling when I was out there. It was only for a minute, and I can't be sure, but it felt different from when we got here. Like the trees were in different places. But that's crazy, I must just be getting confused because of being cooped up here. Trees don't move, right? June 5th. Things are getting kind of desperate. The protein bars and water I brought with me are gone, and there aren't any other supplies in this shack. We searched top to bottom, and there isn't anything except some stuff in jars. Fruit? That looks like it's been there since they built the place. We can't find the car, and everyone is getting hungry. We debated going out on foot, but we have no umbrellas, no idea of exactly where we are, and no way to call for help. Going out seems like a bad idea. But so does staying. It's like we have no good options except to wait and hope things get better. And the worst part is, as I sit here writing, I'm realizing that I didn't tell my parents where the party was because I thought it would just be a short trip. No one knows where we are. June 6th. Nick is gone. We don't know what happened. We woke up and he just wasn't here. He's usually in the main room when we come out in the morning, so when he wasn't there today we went to his room to look for him. It was empty. All of his stuff was gone, phone, wallet, keys, everything. Kayla thinks he must have just decided to go look for help and knew we'd try to talk him out of it, so he went alone. That seems strange to me, but then, she's known him longer than I have and would know better what he'd do. So it's just the two of us now. We were talking earlier tonight, trying to figure out what to do next, and we just went round in circles. I'm leaning toward thinking Nick was right, we can't just stay here forever. But Kayla thinks the rain has to stop eventually and we'll have a better chance if we just keep waiting it out, since there's no guarantee we won't just get lost out there and not be able to find our way back. I don't know. Maybe she's right. I certainly don't feel good about going out there by myself if she won't come. But I'm so hungry, it's hard to think straight. With nothing else to do, what I wouldn't give for a board game right now, we've ended up talking a lot. And it's strange, some of the things she's saying don't really add up. She talked about growing up in Chicago, but I could swear I remember her saying she was raised in New Orleans before coming here. When I asked her, she said she'd had grandparents in Chicago and had visited so much in the summers that it was like her second home. Which I guess makes sense. But when I first asked, I got the distinct impression that, just for a second, she panicked. But I must be reading too much into it, they say being tired and hungry messes with your head, and I'm definitely both. Oh well, hopefully things will be better in the morning. June 7th. The weirdest thing happened this morning. I went to search through my bag, and found 2 more protein bars buried on the bottom. Yay, but I could swear my journal had been moved. Oh, it was still in the bag. But I keep it tucked in the side, behind some other stuff, so it won't be obvious, and today it was sitting close to the top, just under my phone. And since Kayla moved to Nick's old room, there's no one in here with me. I mentioned it to Kayla, and she agreed that I must be forgetting things because I'm tired. But I'm not so sure. June 9th. I think something's wrong with Kayla. I fell asleep early tonight, I've been really tired lately, but I woke up in the middle of the night to a strange feeling. I looked up, and I could have sworn. I know how this sounds, and you'd probably think I'm cracking up if you could see this, but I could have sworn I saw her standing over my bed, staring at me. And there was something wrong with her face. She had the widest, eeriest smile on her face, and her eyes looked empty is the only way to describe it. Like there was no one there. Maybe it was the weather, or the claustrophobic environment, or the isolation, but in that moment, I felt absolutely terrified. I jumped with a start and reached for my phone to turn on the flashlight. My phone has lasted forever on standby since I haven't been using it because of no signal, and when I turned back around, there was no one there. I guess Kayla heard my scream and came running in. I told her what I thought I saw, and she told me that, given our circumstances, it's not surprising that I'd be having bad dreams. I don't know, maybe she's right. But it feels like more than that. And the feeling I had, of absolute fear, as I write this, hours later, it hasn't gone away. June 10th. Today started off normally. Kayla and I met in the main room and, while it was awkward at first, my nervousness died down and last night was mostly forgotten, or at least pushed aside. We talked about our families and shopping and boys, it would have been like a slumber party if we hadn't both been so hungry and anxious. But then, as I was exploring later to find any supplies I'd missed, I saw a door. That wouldn't have been so weird except that I was sure it wasn't there before. And I've had nothing to do lately but wander this freaking house, so I'm pretty sure I'd recognize it. And beyond that, it wasn't just any door. It was thick and heavy, and it totally didn't fit in with the rest of the shack. And even more weirdly, it only appeared when I looked directly at it. When I checked with my peripheral vision, all I saw was the wall. I thought that was strange, clearly nothing gets by me, so I tried to open it, but it was locked. I asked Kayla about it later and she had no idea what I was talking about, so I took her down to it, and it was gone. Like, the entire door was gone, there was nothing but an empty wall. And it's not just the door that was gone. We banged on the wall and it wasn't hollow at all, it was solid, like there was nothing behind the wall but more wall. Kayla got pissed and told me to stop messing with her and that it wasn't funny. At that point, I just let it go like she was right about it being a joke. But it wasn't. I know what I saw. Don't I? June 12th. Fuck. Okay. I was determined to solve the mystery of the disappearing door, so tonight I went back down there. At first I couldn't find the door, but after pacing back and forth trying to figure it out, there it was. I realized that I had walked in front of it 13 times, that should have been my sign to get gone, but like an idiot I kept looking. Why did I keep looking? I opened the door and that's where things went sideways. There was a really dark room, not dark like the lights were out, but dark like the room had never seen light, like light couldn't find it. And there was this sense of wrongness, like I shouldn't be there, like no one should. I turned on my phone flashlight, but the light disappeared about a foot in front of me, like it got sucked up by the darkness. I couldn't tell how big the room was, but somehow it seemed bigger than it should be, and the space felt strange, like it was warped or something. I'm probably not describing it well, but it was super creepy. I stopped a few feet in to make sure I could make my way back, and that's when I heard it. A slithering, like the sound a snake makes as it moves across the ground, but multiplied by 100. And a clicking, coming from what seemed like every direction at once. It was like being in the world's darkest, scariest forest, but that made no sense. I was inside. Then I felt something against my ankle, something slithering. At that point, I panicked and turned around to the door. But it wasn't there. Nope. The door was gone. I couldn't see it or anything at all, it was like the entire room behind me had been swallowed up in darkness. The sounds around me started to get louder, and I felt something against my arm. At that moment, I freaked out. I started shaking my arms and legs, trying to get whatever it was off me. I tried to scream, but I couldn't get the words out, it was like my voice was being absorbed by the darkness around me. And as I stood there, screaming in silence and shaking to get whatever horrible thing I couldn't see off of me, I suddenly saw these lights in the darkness on the other side of the room. They were two lights, about a foot apart, both deep red and glowing. I know this sounds weird, but they looked kind of like eyes. And they were pointed in my direction, like whatever they belonged to was staring at me. At that point I froze. I've never been that scared in my entire life, not even during the incident. But a voice inside of me was saying, "You have to run, Cora. You have to run now." So I did. I turned to where the door should have been, and I ran as fast as I could. And I kept running, for what felt like forever, until finally my hands hit what felt like a stone wall. But the walls of the room shouldn't have been stone. I had no idea what to do, so I just kept feeling against the wall, all the while hearing those sounds around me, getting closer. I was hyperventilating, and I could feel something touch my leg again, and I started to cry. And then I woke up, on the floor outside of the room. Only the room was gone, the door wasn't there. And Kayla was standing over me. She looked worried, asking me what was going on. I didn't know what to say, the truth would make me sound crazy. So I just told her I was exploring and tripped and hit my head. She looked at me strangely but seemed to accept it, and I went back to my room. That's where I am now, writing this all down to prove to myself that it actually happened. I don't know what's going on with this fucked up house, but I hate it. I fucking hate it. June 14th. The rain finally stopped. I woke up this morning and, for the first time in days, couldn't hear the patter of rain on the ceiling. I was so excited, we could finally get the hell out of here. I went to tell Kayla, but I couldn't find her anywhere. Figuring she'd just gone out before I woke up, I got dressed and went outside. But outside wasn't right. It was night and storming when we first arrived, and I know I didn't get a clear look, but I know the cabin was in the middle of a field. But now, the field was gone. In its place were trees, tall, imposing trees that stretched up out of view like they were holding up the sky. And in front of us, maybe 200 feet, was a swamp that I know wasn't there before, since we would have had to drive through it to get to the cabin. And even though I knew it was morning, and there was no rain, it was dark out, with the sky lit only by the moon. The red moon. After all this time praying to get out of the shack, I was starting to wonder if I was better off there. I know I didn't get a clear look, but I'm sure I would have seen a forest or massive trees when we first got here. Right? And what's up with the moon being red? I've heard of eclipses and half moons, but a red moon is just spooky. But I truly didn't want to go back inside of that place, so I kept going. I continued to walk forward slowly, watching each step as I explored. My hope was that I could figure out where I was, maybe find some landmark that would show me the way home. The best guess I could come up with was that the moon was some weird freak weather thing and the trees must be hiding the highway from sight. That meant that, to find my way out, I'd have to head into the trees. I knew something weird was happening, but I held on to the hope that I could find my way back if I kept my head. As I got to the tree line, I paused momentarily. I didn't have a great feeling, the trees seemed kind of unnatural, and it didn't help that I didn't remember seeing them before, but I didn't see what choice I had. My dad used to have this saying he liked, sometimes, the only way out is through. If there was a road, or a town, or any hope of rescue, I was only going to find it by going through the forest. So I stepped through. At first, it was pretty normal, you know, if you ignore the weird trees and the red moon and the darkness in the middle of the morning. This is okay, I thought. I can do this. But then I began to hear noises. At first they were faint, like they were far off in the distance, so I tried to ignore them and kept walking. The trees could only have been so thick, we were in the country, not the Amazon. It could only be so long before I reached the other side, and safety. But as I continued to listen, I started to be able to make them out. They sounded like moans. But not like moans a human being would make, or any animal I'd heard of. They felt strange. Otherworldly. Not sure where that word came from, but it seemed to fit. And then, I began to see a light. It was faint at first, only viewable briefly through the trees. But then it started to get brighter, and I could see that it was going on and off, like something was blinking. By now, I was really starting to reconsider my plan, but what was my choice? Go back to the shack, with almost no food, a missing roommate, and no way to call anyone for help? This was my best chance to get out, to get back to my life, I had to take it. Then I started to hear a new sound, something rustling through the trees. Okay, that happens, forests have animals living in them, and animals rustle. But this rustling was unnatural. It felt off. And then the rustling stopped. Which should have been good, except that the flickering lights and weird moaning had also stopped. As had all other noise. The woods had gone completely quiet. Like something realized I was there. And then it started again. All of it. The trees started to shake, and I could see the branches moving, not just down near me, but 50 feet above. The lights started blinking, now seemingly in my direction. And the moaning was getting louder. Okay, screw this. Forget what Dad said, sometimes, the only way out is out. Time to go. I started running back the way I'd come, and I could hear the rustling starting to get closer. I didn't look back, I just kept running. As fast as I had in my life. But I was still in the woods, I should have been out by now. And the rustling was almost on me. Finally I burst through the tree line and into the open air. I could see the swamp, but there was no way I was going there. Between the woods, the swamp, and the shack seemed like the best choice. I started running toward it, when I heard something crash through the trees. It was still behind me. I didn't look back, I just kept running as fast as I could. I was out of breath, but I knew I didn't dare stop. I could hear whatever it was behind me, each step louder on the ground as it gained on me. I wanted to know how close, and what exactly it was, but I couldn't turn around without slowing down, so I ignored my curiosity and focused on my sense of self-preservation instead. Just as I could feel it almost upon me, I came to the shack, yanked the door open, threw myself inside, and slammed the door behind me. I lay on the ground, waiting for something to smash against the wall or break through the door, but, to my surprise, nothing did. After a few moments, I got up slowly, catching my breath, and went to the window to look outside. There was nothing there. The swamp was there, and the trees, but there was no creature outside. I couldn't even see any footprints except mine. I kept looking, either for the thing following me or for Kayla, when Kayla came around the corner. I could have sworn she had left the shack, but she said she'd been there the entire time. She asked if I was okay, and when I told her what had happened, she looked at me with a questioning look, like she didn't believe me. Like I was crazy. Maybe I was. How can I be mad at her for not believing me when I'm not even sure if I believe me? All I know is, I have to find a way out of this place. I'm hungry and scared and I don't want to be here anymore. June 16th. Jesus Christ. What? Okay, I have to write this down, I don't know how else to process it. Things had been kind of normal since I came back from the woods, I mostly stayed in my room with the door locked. But I realized I needed more answers, so I went to find Kayla. She wasn't in her room, but I saw her walking, so I followed her. She went into the room that wasn't supposed to be there. I thought she might need help. When I was there, it didn't go well, so after a minute to gather my courage, I decided to follow her. I was just going to open the door and peek in. I didn't want to step one foot in that room if I didn't have to. But when I looked in, I was shocked. Kayla was kneeling on the floor, head bowed as if she were praying. And in front of her was a large thing. I don't know what to call it. It looked like a mass of shadows, constantly shifting, with black tentacles emerging from the shadows. And centered in the midst of the shadows were two glowing red eyes. I knew those eyes, they'd been occupying my nightmares for a week now. I stood there, trying to figure out what I was seeing. Could that monster have brainwashed her somehow? Was she being held prisoner? But she didn't look captured. On the contrary, she was raising her head up and down toward the thing and chanting. She didn't look unwilling. But why else would she be here acting like this? And then it happened. As I stood frozen, staring at the scene before me, I took a step forward, and the floor creaked under my foot. I realized my mistake immediately, but it was too late. Both the creature and Kayla turned their heads at once and looked at me, and for a second, it seemed like they were staring with the same red, glowing eyes. At that moment, I turned, ran out of the room, and slammed the door behind me. I ran down the hall and started to go toward my room, but I thought that's where she would look for me first, so I ran to the kitchen and ducked behind the counter. As I knelt there, shaking in fear, I could hear her talking. Cora? Cora? Are you okay? She managed to fill her voice with concern that I might accept as genuine if I hadn't seen her eyes before. Cora, where are you? I'm worried about you. You haven't been acting like yourself lately. I'm worried the lack of food may be getting to you. Come on out and let me help. No fucking way was I doing that. As I heard her voice get slightly further away, I used the time while she was searching my room to look around the kitchen. There weren't many places to hide. It was an ancient kitchen, so there wasn't an island, just an old pantry. But there was silverware. I grabbed a knife from the drawer, opening and closing it quietly, and ran into the pantry and hid behind a shelf that was leaning backwards against the wall. There, I tried to slow my heartbeat and breath while I listened. Cora? Can you hear me? I'm worried about you, sweetie. Just let me know where you are so I can try to help, she said as her voice got closer. She sounded so much like my friend, I really wanted to believe her. I heard her search the main room and then enter the kitchen. I risked a quick glance from the pantry, and what I saw shook me to the core. It was Kayla, but it wasn't. She was still there, her body, her hair, her arms and legs. But there was a deep, glowing red where her blue eyes used to be, like they had been replaced with rubies made of blood. And she kind of glided along the floor instead of walking. And worst of all, she was surrounded by a kind of shadow, not one that followed her along the floor, like shadows are supposed to, but one that enveloped her and moved through the air around her, like a living thing, like something out of nightmares. It was terrifying. I knew then that my best friend was gone, if she'd ever really been there. And I knew that I had to get out. I waited quietly in the pantry, hoping she would pass by and leave the kitchen. And she did, for a moment. But as she was walking out, her body gave a jerk, like she'd been pulled suddenly by a string, and she turned and looked toward the pantry with a sly, self-satisfied smile. Cora, sweetie, I know you're in there. Come on out so I can help you. At this point, I was so scared I could barely think straight, but I knew going out there was a bad idea, so I sat where I was quietly. I looked around for any path of escape, but the only entrance or exit was the one I'd come through. I was trapped. Wheel, if you aren't coming out, I guess I'll have to come in. I could hear her footsteps getting closer, and I started to panic. I wasn't a fighter at all, I never had been, and I certainly wasn't ready to fight whatever she was now. The pantry door creaked open slowly, and I could see the thing that was Kayla stepping in. I was frozen. She continued to come in, talking all the while. I know you're in here, Cora. Why are you hiding from me? Aren't we best friends? Don't you trust me? The hell I did. And at that moment, in a fit of inspiration and strength that I still can't figure out, I pushed with all my might and the shelf I was behind fell forward and crashed onto Kayla. She screamed, and I got up and sprinted out of the pantry. I had no idea where to go. She'd find me in my room, and I wasn't going back to that creepy room she was in before. Then it occurred to me, there was only one option left. I would have to go outside. I could hear her pushing the shelf and knew I didn't have much time, so I ran for the door of the shack, threw it open, and burst out into the field beyond, closing the door behind me in the vain hope that she wouldn't follow me there. Where to go? The swamp was still there, as were the woods with their unknown horrors. And above, the red moon still shone down from the unknown sky. I remembered a quote I read once, "The universe is vast and dark and full of terrors." I'd never realized how true that was. My mother once said that it's easy to make good choices when you have good options, but sometimes the only options you have are bad ones, and then you just have to do the best you can. So, with no good options to choose from, I ran towards the forest. I crossed the open space quickly, barely noticing my footsteps as I made it to the edge of the woods and crossed over. At once the sounds cut away, and I was left in an oppressive silence. After only a few moments, though, the silence went away, and I began to hear the same quiet moans as in my previous visit. I watched the door of the house from behind a tree at the edge of the woods. I'm not sure what I was hoping to see. Would seeing Kayla or waiting longer in these woods be more terrifying? But, after a minute, Kayla emerged from the shack. She looked back and forth for a moment, then her face pointed directly toward me, as if some extra sense told her exactly where I was, although she couldn't possibly have seen me. Either way, she started walking slowly across the open space toward the woods. With nowhere else to go, I began to walk quietly further back into the trees. I tried to stay close to the edge to be able to escape quickly, but I kept having to go further in as I heard Kayla following me. Suddenly, I began to hear something else. While Kayla was nearing me from behind, something else began to approach from ahead. The trees began rustling, just as before, and I sensed that wherever had chased me before was there, as if it had been waiting. I turned to my right, trying to cut a path away from both of my pursuers, but I knew it wouldn't work forever. Desperate, I crouched behind a tree and hoped neither would notice me. "Cora," came a voice suddenly from about 100 feet behind me and to my left. "Why are you running? Aren't we friends? Come with me and let's get out of here. We can go and try to find help." As I knelt, shaking, behind the thick trunk, I felt something under my leg. I looked down, and saw a pile of dirt that had obviously been dug up recently. Quietly, I reached down and dug at the dirt with my hands. I don't know what I expected, but I wasn't prepared for what I found. There, in a small hole beneath the dirt, were a wallet, keys, and a cell phone, along with 2 fingers. I opened the wallet, and the driver's license had Nick's picture. Oh my God. What happened to Nick? Did Kayla sacrifice him in some kind of weird ritual? Why? And what was I doing here? Where was here, even? And why did I ever trust her and follow her to this evil place? By this point, I was scared out of my mind, and I kept hearing Kayla get closer. "Come on out, Cora. There's still time to make it out of here." She was only 2 trees over, now, and I realized I'd have to face her. I reached for the knife from the kitchen, but it was gone. I must have dropped it when I was leaving the shack. Damn it. Tears were falling down my face, but I had no time for them. "Think, Cora. What now?" Suddenly, Kayla stood before me. But she was no longer Kayla. She still bore a resemblance to the person I'd thought was my friend, but now, knowing what she was and what she'd done, she no longer stirred the feelings I used to have for her. Her eyes were glowing a bright red, and a shadow pulsed around her as if alive. She looked at me, red eyes filled with malice, and smiled. "I've finally found you, Cora. Nice job of running, but that's over now." I looked into her eyes, and the red glow started to expand out of them, the same red as the moon above, I now realized. I don't know how to describe it, it was like I could feel it in my soul. And I suddenly started to remember all of the darkest moments of my life, all of my regrets. I was 9. I was hungry in the middle of the night, and I wanted cookies. I knew I wasn't allowed in the cookie jar, but I opened it anyway. It broke, and I let my parents think that my little brother Sam did it. They believed me, but I've always felt guilty. I was 13. The other girls had the idea to cut class to graffiti the girls' bathroom. I thought it was a bad idea, but they were popular and I wanted to be, too. I was grounded for 2 weeks. My parents said the right things, but I could feel their disappointment. I was ashamed that I'd let them down. I was 16. I had just gotten my driver's license and was excited to pick up my little brother from school. My parents normally wouldn't let me, but they both had to work late and I promised to be careful. I didn't mean to drop my phone, or to take my eye off the road. I'd told Sam to wear his seatbelt, but I should have checked to make sure. My parents told me they didn't blame me, but I always felt that they looked at me differently, especially after the divorce. I certainly blamed myself, and why wouldn't I? It's not every teenage girl who kills her baby brother. All of my worst moments began to play on a loop in my mind, and all the while, the thing that used to be Kayla kept smiling. And the more I suffered, the brighter the red glow from her eyes became and the more the shadow around her pulsed and spread. It was like it was feeding off of my misery and pain. I fell to my knees, the pain was overwhelming and I was starting to have trouble thinking. The thing that used to be Kayla began walking toward me, arms outstretched and shadow seeping through the air between us, and I knew this was it. I was going to die here. But then I thought of my parents. What they'd already lost. Could I let them lose me, too? And I realized that, as much as I blamed myself for Sam, and as much as I'd hated myself for the last 2 years, I had to let it go. I'd blamed myself so much that I'd tried to end my life last year, thinking that I didn't deserve to be alive if he wasn't, but I was wrong. I did want to live. I would never forget him, but I had to find a way to move forward. And to do that, I had to get away. The thing that used to be Kayla was almost on me now. I could feel its shadow touching my skin. And I was weak and had nothing to defend myself with. And then it was on me, and, in a fit of desperation, I plunged one of the keys from Nick's keychain into its neck. It reared back in pain, and I found the strength to rise to my feet and begin running. I didn't have a plan, all I could think was to get back to the shack. I ran through woods, branches whipping against my legs and face, but I didn't dare slow down. As I approached the tree line, I heard the thing that used to be Kayla start running after me. But I also heard something else, the thud of heavy footsteps. The thing that had chased me during my first visit into the woods was back. I had no time to worry about it now, I just ran as quickly as I could. I passed by the swamp, hearing both of my pursuers getting closer. I could see the shack ahead of me, but I didn't know if I would make it in time. Then, suddenly, there was a great noise behind me. Against my better judgment, I looked back. I will remember what I saw there for the rest of my life. A huge creature made of darkness emerged from the trees. It was as if all of the shadows of everything nearby coalesced into a single shadow as tall as a building. Dozens of shadow tendrils extended from its body, and 100 eyes adorned its head, each glowing the same red as the moon. I didn't see how anything like it could exist. It was terrifying. For tendrils began to extend toward me, and I knew I was done for. But then the tendrils shifted and wrapped around each of the limbs of the thing that used to be Kayla. It slash, she screamed as the tendrils lifted it, slash her off the ground, and the shadow around it slash her began to leach away from it, slash her and into the larger creature. And then, once the shadow was entirely gone, the creature pulled. And the thing that used to be Kayla gave an agonizing scream as each of the limbs was separated from it, slash her body with a sharp ripping sound. Eventually, the screaming stopped. And as I stood there, I felt the creature looking at me, almost as if it were weighing me. After what could have been a minute or a lifetime, the creature turned and slunk back into the woods. And I ran into the shack, closed the door, and cried. That was all 2 hours ago. Eventually the adrenaline wore off and I passed out. And now I'm awake again and writing this all down while it's fresh in my mind. I don't know what's real. I don't know where I am. I don't know what that thing was. But I am alone in this shack now, and I know that I have to figure out what to do next. There's no one to help me, I'm on my own. June 18th. It's been 2 days since I faced off against the thing that used to be Kayla. It's been quiet here, no one else is in the shack, and I piled furniture in front of the door leading to the room of horrors. I might even be safe here for a while. But there's no food. My protein bars and water are gone, and I'm starting to get really hungry. And if I stay here, I'll probably never see my home or family again. And I really want to. After everything I've been through, I realize I really want to live. So I've thought about what to do. Nick's car is long gone, as there's no way to go get help. My phone is still hanging on by a thread. They really weren't lying about the standby battery time, but there's no internet and no way to call anyone. And it's unlikely that anyone is just going to drop by. So I can stay here until I starve to death, or I can go for help. Out there. It seems like a bad idea, but I don't have a better option. The thing out there saw me once and let me live, maybe it doesn't want me. Maybe it just wanted the thing that used to be Kayla all along. Or maybe she was an appetizer and it will be hungry again soon. Or maybe there's something out there that's even worse. I honestly don't know. But I'm out of options. I'm leaving this journal here. It won't do me any good out there, and maybe someone will find it here and come help. I don't know, but it's worth a try. If you find this, I'm alone, and scared, and I could really use your help. Please come find me. I'll be out there. In the trees. This is Cora Bennett, signing off. Note, this journal was found in the middle of an empty field in Alameda County, California. The search for its author is ongoing.